Everyone, welcome to the Next Play podcast. We're bringing on great people to talk about career moves, picking companies to start and join, behind the scenes of their decision making, and what they've learned. I'm Ben, I'm an angel investor, and I'm super excited to have you here with us today.
Hey Nikunj, it's great to have you here with us today. I'm really excited to dive into your journey.
Hey Ben, thanks for having me here. Excited to dive in.
Awesome. So you've spent some time at some really incredible tech companies over the past few years, including LinkedIn, Opendoor, Meter, and now, of course, at Khosla as an investor. Can you share a little bit about how you got into tech and what that looked like?
Yeah, I've been very lucky and privileged to, have companies and founders kind of accept me into their fold. My journey to tech is a little bit unique, but also a bit cookie cutter, where I went to Urbana-Champaign and I was doing my electrical engineering degree and started taking more CS courses and kind of thought I'd be an engineer over time. And then while I was in college, I joined a consulting group called Illinois Business Consulting and absolutely loved it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to become a business consultant for life, and kind of was going down that path. And I called my brother and I was like, hey, I'm applying for these internships. It's my junior year. And he's like, why are you doing business consulting? You could be doing this thing called like product management. And at that time, I didn't even know what product management meant. But as I kind of like dived into it more, I felt it was like the perfect intersection of my interest at kind of like design, engineering, and business. I had no idea how to get a PM internship, but I remember AJ at Yahoo, who I met in my freshman year at Career Fair, kind of just cold emailed him and said, hey, I want like an internship. It's 6 weeks before the summer starts, but kind of just do some magic if you can. And he was able to do some magic, and I've been forever grateful. I got into the PM internship at Yahoo, which I absolutely loved, and kind of it made me mind to come back to the Bay Area. And LinkedIn was on campus in my senior year, and kind of like I was lucky to meet incredible people there, and they gave me a associate product manager role right out of college, and that has begun my journey to tech and being at the Bay Area.
So what drew you into a product role so early on?
Yeah, I frankly didn't know better is the honest answer. I felt like I wasn't a good engineer. I wasn't a great designer. I knew something about business, but like not enough. And this felt like the right kind of role that aligns to all my interests. But I wasn't sure I was going to be good or great at this. So I'm not sure. But it felt kind of like the right role towards my eventual like dream of starting something. And I felt it was the most unique role I could get to understand how companies work. PMs, a lot of different nuances, but at the start I was just very interested in being at that intersection and kind of understanding how companies work and hopefully take it forward and work with really smart people. But that was honestly it. It was like I was all set in a different life. We would not be having this conversation. I would just be a business consultant and kind of just going down that path.
Fast forward a few years, I know you landed at Opendoor early on, and you spent 4 years there and worked on a bunch of different things, eventually leading the growth. Seems like Opendoor was able to attract a lot of really incredible talent early on and grew really fast. Do you remember how you came across Opendoor and what made you want to join?
Yeah, so in 2015 I joined, but this is right before Opendoor, and I'll kind of answer your question too. I joined a company called Ship. That was in the logistics space, and right about then I kind of had this thesis where I felt like the really great product experiences were not happening in the purely digital world. This was like peak Uber days and peak other operations days, and I was like, I really want to understand how to build product in the physical space, and that's when I kind of joined this company called Ship, and I was there for a couple of years, and I really enjoyed the experience, and kind of like learned a lot about what it takes to build product in the Atom space, not just on digital screens online. And I was kind of like, that's what I wanted to do. I think in the next few years, and one of my best friends, David Lundgren, he worked at Opendoor, and I was having lunch with him, and he was telling me he was an early employee there, and he was telling me how the company is transforming the second biggest asset class in the country, and just making it radically easier for people to buy and sell homes. And I was intrigued, and he introduced me to who would become my eventual manager, and had a few conversations with them. And I was pretty impressed by two things. One, it's just like, I didn't know the process was so hard, like of buying and selling the home. I understand the semantics, but I didn't understand the customer pain. Like people having to move twice because they'd sell their house and then move to the parents' house and move again, or people having to like have two mortgages, and how Opendoor was giving them certainty and simplicity just felt like the right move for a journey this big. And then the second is kind of what you mentioned. The talent density was unbelievable. When I joined, the company was about 200 people, and by my counting, there was about like 17 to 20 founders of the company. So 10% of the company were founders. And the fact that Eric, Keith, JD, and Ian were able to kind of attract this incredible talent density was just like and the very worst, I just learned a lot is kind of like the thinking, and at the very best, I will hopefully help transform what this like real estate journey looks like. And so that was at the genesis.
It's incredible. I don't think there are a lot of companies that are able to attract so many founders. I feel like maybe Ramp, I've heard that they have a pretty high talent density of founders, but not many others.
Rippling is another example. I think it does take a lot of patience, and I think it does take a small amount of kind of like, you have to kind of build a snowball before like the eventual like avalanche to do it. You need a few, and it's hard. I mean, like founders are generally very ambitious and very opinionated, and I wouldn't lie, it was tough sometimes at Opendoor because there were just so many like very strongly opinionated people in the same room, and it can be a recipe for disaster also. Let's be very honest. But I think they were able to kind of thread the needle, which I think other companies have not. And I think Rippling kind of does the same thing, and Ramp has done. And I think many companies will come because, especially, you're able to get someone to come in and own a function. Like they were able to get like Evan Moore, the co-founder of DoorDash, to come in and kind of own like a giant function, and able to give them a lot more autonomy, which I think is hard as a founder to do. But if you can do it well, I think it's.
And so when you were considering joining Opendoor, were you looking at other opportunities as well at the same time?
Yeah, I basically started the conversation with Opendoor, and then I started looking at like other places as well. But I was firmly looking at companies that were doing something in like the physical world. Again, I just wanted to continue my journey. I was like, I started understanding it a bit at Ship, but I just didn't have enough time. And I think, anything for mastery just takes a lot of time. It's a different way of thinking. So there were a few other companies, and won't name them just or privacy, and like I had an offer from another company as well at the same time, similar, trading a huge market in the physical space, and between the two, I just felt like the people at Opendoor was kind of like the main reason to kind of decide to go there versus the others. But there's not that many. Even today, it's very hard to find companies like early stage, like targeting large markets in the physical space. It's a very small minority. It's getting more and more with the hard tech and the Gundo craze now, but it was crickets back in 2017 when I joined.
What was the interview process like for joining Opendoor?
Yeah, it was my goal every time I interview is to kind of hack the process. I hate interviewing. I'm not a good interviewee, to be very honest. And so here's a pro tip and a hack that kind of worked really well for me, which is what I do before I join. This worked at Ship as well, and Call, and Opendoor, and also Meter, which is like I basically write like a full 6-page memo on like the company, what I think are strengths and weaknesses, what I think are big opportunities, what I think I would do in my first 30 and 60 days there, and then kind of all my assumptions that went into the memo. And I do this even before my first formal interview. So not like the intro chat, and then I just send that memo ahead of my like on-site or ahead of my like time before I'm spending more. I just spend a weekend, just kind of write down my thoughts, I send it to them. And the beauty of that is like, instead of you not knowing what the questions are going to be, the interview process is reversed because all they want to talk is about that memo. And you spend all this time researching the company. It just shows like initiative, and it shows kind of like how you've kind of already thought through a lot of the things that they want to ask. But the benefit is like you're very prepared, but you're just most of the conversations on things you've written, as long as your ChatGPT wasn't a thing back in the days, but as long as you haven't like had a bot write it and you spend a lot of time thinking about it, it just makes it very simple. And so that's kind of what I did before my on-site at Opendoor. I talked to two people before the on-site. I just sent them the memo, and then the on-site was talking to four people at the company in the team that I was going to join. And most of the conversations ended up being about the memo itself, and then some behavioral questions, which I thought like also gave me a leg up. But frankly, I mostly did it for making sure that I can control what this interview journey like, because it can be very intimidating, it can be very unknown, and I just feel like I like when I'm very convicted about doing something, I just want to make sure I can seize it with both hands as possible. And yeah, that's how I've kind of been able to hack the interview process in the last two companies I've joined.
That's a great tip. Do you remember what your first week at Opendoor was like?
Oh yeah, I remember. We were in an office that was way too small for the number of people at the company. This is 1160 in Montgomery. A lot of Opendoor people will remember. Everybody was sharing desks by this time. We were all kind of smushed in. It was like chaos. And it was in a good way. It's like everybody, we just raised, I think, a big round, and so there's a lot of excitement, but there's also a lot of growth happening. We clearly weren't staffed, or like the organizational structure was just stretching to the point where we had meetings where the entire customer buyer team that helps people like buy houses from Opendoor was in one giant meeting room. There used to be like 40% meeting every Monday, and it was incredible. Just like everything was flying around, like things everybody talks to you about when you see in movie or like in seeing like TV shows like hypergrowth. I was like kind of living it, and there was some onboarding, but it was mostly like we need you to start like cooking things right away, and everybody just kind of like added me to meetings and I did some intros, but it was kind of just like get going and help us scale this organization on the buyer side, especially because the way Opendoor works for people to know is like we would all cash offers, buy a home, and then we do some renovation or like make sure the home is in condition that's ready to be bought. Then we put it on the market, and then people can visit the homes using the app or with an agent, and we're trying to navigate that from someone visit all the way to someone buying the house. And that was the team I was kind of staffed to help organize and make sure that process goes nice. Best sense. It was amazing.
Do you have any like takeaways looking back on your time there on, for someone getting into a similar function or joining like a fast growing company, just how to navigate?
Yeah, I think a couple would be helpful. I think there's famous adage of like when you're offered a seat on the rocket ship, just take it. And so I joined Opendoor as like a PM, like not even senior PM or anything, just like my title was PM, and it was on the internal tools team. And so I had never done internal tools before. I'm very much a consumer, or like I like being customer facing. I'd never known what it's like to help a sales team, and my primary customers were sales and support. And I think when I was looking in, that was a big question mark. I was like, I don't think I am A, qualified for this role, and B, like something that I would get up for. But I think when I looked at the company, what it's doing, the trajectory and the people, I was like, hey, like, you can always change, and you can always kind of learn, and you can always kind of like, finagle your way. If the company's doing well and you're doing well, they'll give you opportunities. And so I think that adage is still pretty true today. And I think if you find a great company, just keep your ego aside on the title, maybe even a comp a little bit, and then kind of like make sure you get offered a seat, and you just take it. So I think that's one. The other is similar, which is like, just know your role will evolve. Like, role will change every 12 to 18 months. And I think your job is to make sure like you are prepared for that, and you can kind of grab opportunities with both hands. So the way I think about my role is like help do the job, get it to a better place 12 to 18 months from now, and then either hire someone who can do it better, because I'm definitely more of a 0 to 1 person than a 1 to many person. I went to many in the one to many phase, and so hire someone who can do the job, keep it in a good place, and then find the next hardest problem to solve. And so some people know exactly what they want to do, then, kind of just keep doing that for 4, 5, 7, 8 years, whatever it was. But if you're always hungry to solve new problems, just make sure you do a really good job, and make sure you set it up really well, and then find the next hardest problem to solve in the company. And so that's kind of what I did at Opendoor. Over the 4 years, I had 3 or 4 different jobs. Started with internal tools. Next, we helped with closing, which was a big part and manual and heavy, and we automated that because we were buying hundreds of homes a week. And then joined the seller team as kind of leading the experience, and then eventually the last step was kind of the growth team, especially after we kind of restarted the company and so just always be ready to take on your responsibility and then be ready to just work on the hardest problems.
So after Opendoor, you joined Meter, and I know they've raised a bunch of funding from great investors, and have a really great team. What attracted you to joining Meter after?
Yeah, I think similarly after Ship, you wanted something in the physical space. Similarly after Opendoor, spent 4 years there and saw an incredible roller coaster, especially with the COVID. And the company was thousands of people by the time I left, was kind of clamoring to do something more 0 to 1 again. And I was chatting with a bunch of people, trying to find smart founders attacking something in the physical space in deeply unsexy markets. That's kind of if I had to create a pretty good perfect job description, that's kind of what it is for me. And again, chatted with this time I chatted with a lot more companies, but chatted with Anil and Sunil, who are the co-founders of Meter. I actually first chatted with them in 2020 and just got interested in them. And at that time, they weren't looking for a PM, rightfully so. And so we kind of left, just leaving being really impressed, and then keep in touch with them every 3 months. We grab, just chatted on Zoom this COVID time, or they could just share product feedback here and there. And then I actually referred their current head of marketing to come join Meter. She used to work with me at Opendoor. And then she was the one, eventually I figured out we needed someone to run this new product. And they reached back out, and it was actually pretty simple for me. But what mainly attracted me was just Anu and Sunil are just incredible founders. The story is just unbelievable. They've been working at this company for 6 years when I joined, and 9 years now. Basically unknown, spent first 5 years working on it by themselves, have built a company that does hardware, software, and operations, and I joined as the 18th employee. And even then they were doing everything by themselves. So incredible vision, incredible kind of what they want to do, the next 5 years. And you've worked with Ivan, they just kind of know where the world is going to evolve to and have everything laid out. Just the path to get there will be a little bit messy, and they kind of already have thought about all of that. But also can go down to the very details, which is kind of they can tell you exact numbers on the unit economics, but also kind of go back up and talk about the vision, which I think that latitude is something I look for in founders. And then so we're just the top founders kind of, right? And so the problem area made sense to me, but it was mostly, again, back to the people. And then they hired incredible. The OD team was also really good. And so it was, my itch is going back to 0-1, but I think mostly the people kind of attracted me back to going Meter.
Yeah, it sounds like just an incredible team. Why do you think they've been able to attract such amazing people?
Anil and Sunil are incredibly diligent, I think, and they're just they also think incredibly long term, which I think is rare. I think when you're running a small startup, it's so easy to caught up with the iterations of the small semantics, but they truly think about hiring people as if these people are going to be there for the long term. And I think that's really hard, especially as you're scaling, especially as you're stretching to the seams. I think it's really hard, but they just have this incredible focus of just hiring people for the long term. And I think then they've hired people like that who then go hire other functions that are kind of like that. And so we spend a lot of time with people to kind of understand that and see what they're doing. And I think just everyone's kind of attracted to that long-term thinking, which I think is very refreshing, as we know, versus most startups are kind of can't tell you what they're going to do beyond 12 months, versus another are kind of just always beating the income, like, hey, what's the right set of things to do that gets us to the right long-term outcome rather than let's just tweak here and then. And they're very great craft people. Like their craft is like incredibly strong, and they hired people. I don't know why they hired me, but they've hired people with like lot of like really good craft, which I think shows in, you go to their website, it doesn't look like an enterprise SaaS company, and it's similar to like, Function and others. They're just very thoughtful, and they've hired a lot of people.
It sounds like you had a really great run at Meter. When you left, what did that look like? Did you find a replacement? What was that process like?
Yeah, it's probably the hardest decision I've taken, leaving Meter. I think the company is going to be doing really well. And I basically gave them like a 4-month notice. And so I didn't have another date planned immediately after Meter. And so I basically in summer of last year told them, hey, I think we're at an inflection point. I think, the company's doing really well. I just feel like I need to do something different. I've been doing early stage startup for about 10 years, and I think the learning curve is great, but I feel like it's a good time to kind of like step back and think about what I want to do for the next maybe half decade or maybe decade of my life. And I basically like spent time with them to ensure all the functions are in a good place. I would try to hire a replacement, and it was just like hard to find one that, because the structure that the way like my role was, it was more like a PM style GM. So not only I was responsible for building the product, but also like the P&L and kind of like, revenue and other numbers as well. And we interviewed a bunch of candidates, and I still send them a bunch of candidates. And luckily we have Sean, who's the other PM on the team. He's, handling a lot of the workload now. But if you're a smart PM or GM looking for your next gig, you should definitely go join Meter.
For sure. It seems like you're also a pretty active angel investor. Invested in companies like Primer and Opendoor. Can you talk a little bit how you got into angel investing?
Yeah, I think I was lucky to be at Opendoor. I think that was the main, like, I have a spreadsheet now. There's about 32 founders that have left Opendoor and started their own companies. Yeah,
Wow.
and so I basically got started. I didn't even know about angel investing. I didn't have a lot of disposable income. I think after spending a long time in early stage startup, you realize you're left with a lot of private equity, not really liquid dollars. But I just started with like writing very small, like $1,000 checks into some of the founders that left Opendoor to start their own companies, and so kind of started with that, and then eventually those people referred me to other founders that they knew, and then kind of chatted with that. And so that was like the primary motion. And then eventually, as I got more comfortable understanding the motion and kind of how to do it, a few things helped. One was any product or company that I would like, I would just cold Twitter DM the founder and start with just like talking about product. And eventually those led to like, angel investments, some led to lifelong like friendships, and I think some led to like opportunities that I wouldn't have been possible. And so any product that I like catches my eye, I immediately mission and kind of see what they're doing. I just call Twitter DM the founder and be like, hey, I'm really interested in what you're doing. There's a few things I found interesting about your product. Would love to like go for a coffee, and you'd be surprised if that's pretty easy. If you provide value up front, then most founders will take a meeting, even though and it was much easier as an operator, a little bit harder as an investor. That people are very willing to have people on the like operators of built companies in the past that have people. And then very grateful to work first round to the Angel Track program, and then eventually also to Girl Scouts that inducted me into the program. And so those two were like perfect melting pots of like really smart angel investors with like much better portfolios that I had to learn from them and kind of like share with them and collaborate with them. And so that's how eventually like the got like more deal flow and got more interesting founders that were not within my immediate network.
Cool. And so now you recently joined Khosla on the investing side. So you went full time on it. What's it like going from being an operator to being on the investment side?
Yeah, it's only been 6 weeks, and so I'm still learning is the honest answer. Still struggling. I think like half my brain is still operator mode and half is more investing mode, and I think it's like slowly shifting over time. But it's been really, really fun. I think like the reason I joined venture capital is because I think in the last 18 months, especially, I just saw the quality of the founders and what they're building and the ambitions were at a level I haven't frankly seen before. I think 2021, obviously, everybody knows like it's not is easier to raise money and like there's a lot of like frenzy. But the last 18 months have not been kind. And so like I think if you're a founder really going after it today, there's a lot of fortitude. And I just saw that happening over and over again. People are just being more ambitious, taking every hurdle and kind of like crossing that pretty easily. And so for me, like I felt like I was spending more time outside of Meter kind of thinking about these things and thought like this is one opportunity to kind of understand that and make it do it full time. And the transition has been fun. I think the fun part about the role is getting to see the future a little bit before like other people do, getting to like meet and see like these incredible founders and kind of help them. The hard part of the role is like I think just saying no constantly is like very very challenging. Part of me still misses the operating side, which is like being a little bit having like a shared mission, but all in all, I think I'm really enjoying it, and the team here has been incredibly gracious with their time and just being even a fly in the room in a lot of these meetings. I've been able to learn a lot, which it's hard to do when you're as an angel doing this.
Did you spend any time exploring what you wanted to do before joining Khosla?
I did. I took a 3 month sabbatical. One of the paths I'd kind of eliminated was founding a new company or joining an early stage startup because honestly, like that would have just stayed at Meter. I think if I wanted to do that, the company is doing really well, and I could have kind of like been there for a long time. And so then the paths that like I talked to were one was kind of to join a larger company and kind of become like I don't know some version of PM manager or an ICPM for a new product. One other option was be like an EIR and kind of explore ideas and see if I wanted to start my own company, and not immediately, but maybe in a little bit. The other option was like maybe join something on the research side, and the last one was kind of more on the venture capital. I think as I talk to more people, again, with my interest in the angel side and just seeing the level of founders, like VC was definitely my first option in terms of like if I was able to be at a firm that like I could learn a lot from, and the thought process is like I can whatever timeline it be. I'm hoping this will be for the next who knows how long, but like for at least like the next half decade. Like I could learn a lot just like by being surrounded by really sharp people, and hopefully my end dream is to eventually start a company, and so hopefully the combination of both operating and then understanding on the investing side and at least into that direction. But I'm not married to it per se. I kind of like take it as it comes, and it's just really excited to be here and learn a lot.
It seems in your journey that you've picked some really great companies and had an incredible track record so far. For folks who are earlier in their career and kind of thinking about these things, any kind of tips or thoughts on like how they should be thinking about opportunities?
Yeah, first, I think it's very easy to look back to my career and kind of say that, oh, you've been at great places, but I think there's a lot of luck involved. And so, one thing I talk to a lot of people, and one thing I would say, just choose your own path. Like, I think it's good to be inspired. I feel a lot of people are just have a lot of envy or just kind of want to imitate someone's path just because it looks cool. Like, I think that's like a short way of not being happy. And so I think just one major piece of advice is to like choose your own path. Just know that like you can always change whatever you're doing at any point, which I think is a privilege I've had, and I think other people have as well. So I think that's number one. Two is kind of be be as in the know as you can be. So that doesn't mean like you're constantly looking for new jobs, but surround yourself with a group of people that are in the know, are always kind of like at the leading edge. It doesn't have to be VCs in general, but like even founders and operators, because sometimes we get too pigeonholed at like learning about the company we're at. but oftentimes you can learn a lot of lessons from like looking around you. And I think I've been lucky to have a strong network of people who I can like always lean on, whether it's for advice or even just like for how to operate better. And so don't just build your network within the company, but also kind of build your network around. And then the last one is just have like pretty low ego in terms of like what to do. I think if you're tied to a career ladder, if you're tied to like particular salary, if you're tied to a title, I think that's fine. You can optimize to that. But I think my optimization has always been for like learning curve, and I'm just I think that's kind of helped me. And I kind of challenge people to do the same, where it's okay if you were a VP of product and you went back to being an IC engineer. It's okay if you were, like had like 50 people in your team and now you're kind of just doing the grunt work and stuff. I think don't ever think that you are true above or below doing something, and especially when you work in startups. I think that'll just like suit you very well.
All right, last question before we hop off. I really like your public book tracker that you built in Notion. Do you have any favorites so far from 2024?
Yeah, I think Peter actually wrote this book called Outlive, and it's easily like probably one of the best books I've read. It was a big wake-up call. I think I'm in my like early 30s. I have a 2.5-year-old kid. I think my physical and maybe a little bit mental health has been kind of put on the back burner. I'm just like actively working towards helping it. And Peter just strikes this like incredibly thorough book that focuses on how you can increase your health span, which is like how you can be cognitively and physically sharp even as you grow older, versus just increasing your lifespan, which is just trying to hit 90. And I would say I've done a lot of the things that he recommends, but it's very tactical. It doesn't just like preach at you, it gives you the science behind it. And it's very easy to kind of like, apply what he's doing and kind of do it. And then highly recommend everyone reading it and then kind of like applying a lot of the principles he shares.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to share your journey with us, and look forward to seeing what you invest in and where things go from here.
Yeah, thanks so much, Ben, for having me here.